Welcome to week 8 in CS 120. So we're playing around with web design now. So an overview of this week and our main outcomes. We're playing around with the language of web pages, which is HTML and CSS. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. CSS is Cascading Style Sheets. Some reading that's related to things we've looked at before, how the internet works, how the web works. The web is part of the internet, not the whole thing. The idea of a website versus a web page versus a web server and a search engine, and understanding links on the web. So you'll need to go through these tutorials here before you continue. What I'm going to play around with you now is HTML, which is the main language of web pages. There are links here for W3 schools, and there's a bunch of try-it-yourself links in each of these pages that you really ought to do. Otherwise, it's going to be hard to catch on to this new language. So like learning any language, you got to practice. If you don't practice, it's not going to go well. So just reading it's not going to help. Trying it once, not going to help. You have to try it multiple times, and there's some good stuff here. So let's jump into W3 schools. So one thing that's nice at W3 schools is they give us a basic template for what a web page should contain. So I'm going to copy that basic template right now, and I'm going to open up a text editor. Text editor that's recommended for this class is Notepad++. I'm going to use a different one right now because I am in Linux and not Windows. I'm going to use Bluefish. Kind of like this one. So let's paste that in. And then if I save it, then Bluefish will recognize the HTML. And one thing that's important when you save an HTML file is you know where it's going, because directory structure is super important. So I'm going to put it in, let's see, my Gary folder. And in Gary, I have some documents. And in documents, I have CS, CS120. And I'm going to create a folder right now in my new websites. Other important things, when you make file names and folders for web development, don't put any spaces in them. Bad, bad, bad. So here what I'm using is camel case, capitalizing the first letter of each word. Alternatively, you could put dashes in between. Notice I do that sometimes too. But don't put spaces. So I'm going to create my new folder, and in that folder I'm going to create a file called index.html. Your home page is usually going to be called index.html. Helps if you can spell. There we go. And so in my new website folder, I have a file called index.html. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. And that's the main language of web pages. Once I do that, you'll see that my editor recognizes that it's HTML and color codes some of the information here. So let's blow this up. If I can remember how to blow things up in this particular system. And apparently I don't. Okay, we're just going to go with it. Hopefully you can read that. So this is an HTML file, start and finish. One thing that's important is in HTML you have tags. So a tag is enclosed in less than, greater than symbols. We call those angle brackets. Anytime you have a starting tag, you should have a corresponding ending tag, which is slash, whatever the name of the tag is. And then in between, different kinds of tags. We have our head tag that contains information about the page. We have the body tag, which contains the actual page information. And then inside the body tag, there's things like headings and paragraphs. So I'm going to save this file. To view it, I open up my file manager and I find the directory I put it in. And I open it up in a web browser, displays the HTML. So here's my heading and here's my paragraph. If you right-click, you can usually view the page source, and that will show you the HTML that makes the page look the way it does. Now sometimes CSS is involved. That's called cascading style. Cascading style is a way for you to take control over the look of the page. HTML contains the structure of the page. So over the next couple of weeks, we're going to try and get used to structure and style in HTML. So our goal right now is we're going to create 2 pages with a couple of links and an image. I'll throw in a little bit of style, but mostly it's HTML. Now, you're probably familiar with playing around with WordPress. And you've been many times to math.wordpress.com. And so, let's see, I'm going to bring up a different version. So here's me as a user, kind of like you are. User number 23, my name is Bo Dog. My nickname is Gary's Bo Dog, Dog Bo, excuse me. I have an email address. Important thing is you have your WordPress profile set up right with a first name and a last name. If you have that set up right, then the WordPress file manager down in the bottom of your tools on the left of your console, this is a place for you to store web pages that you can then retrieve later. So any files that I upload here will be visible to the rest of the internet, and we'll play around with that later. For now, you have to store them on your computer somewhere, and then later we'll upload them to the web, the WordPress file manager, and then they'll be visible to the rest of the world. So we're actually going to build websites and have them published, and WordPress is going to help them publish them with this plugin called WordPress File Manager. There's lots of other ways to publish websites. This is a nice free way we found for you to publish your sites. If you take any web page and you right-click, one of the options should be, let's see, we got inspect there. I want to view source. Where is view source? There we go. View page source. All of this stuff here is a combination of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And so we're going to learn how to read all this crazy stuff here. Now, what we're mostly concerned about here is what's inside the body of an HTML document. So we're going to try and get used to reading this and setting it up so it makes pretty web pages. Now, WordPress handles most of that for us, but sometimes, even with WordPress, a program that handles all the language for us, sometimes we still need to look at the code. So that's what we're going to learn to do now, is look at the code. In order to do that, you're going to have to go to W3 Schools and check out most of these tutorials. Now, W3 Schools has pretty short tutorials for the most part. They're a couple of pages long, and they usually have a "you try it," where you can go in and you can change the source and then see the results. So I'm going to type. And we hit run, and bang, it demonstrates what we have here. So we'll play around with more of this. So you really should try the "you try it's" here. We have some information about editors. Let's go to basics next. So basics, they go and describe some of the things I was talking about here, like the idea of headings. There's different levels of headings. Notice we have heading 1, 2, and 3 here. So we can see that the biggest heading is a 1, and the smallest heading drops down to a 6. And again, editing those will change the results here after you hit run. And you can also save it, put it in your drive. It's going to be a very useful site. Let's jump back in here and take a look at the next couple of pages. in our Canvas site. So here I recommend different editors depending on what kind of system you're using. Now, alternative pages I've listed here are from Mozilla Developer Network. Some people like that better. Problem I have with Mozilla Developer Network are two. The tutorials are pretty long. So where the introduction HTML here is one big page in Mozilla Developer, it's 5, 6, or 10 little pages in W3 Schools. I like the little pages better. And then the You Try It's in Mozilla Developer are a little more complex than the You Try It's in W3 Schools. But there's great information in either place. So here's some extra tutorials from Mozilla Developer Network if you happen to like that. And I listed some more things here you can play with. Jumping on, let's take a look at the tutorial submission. Now this is going to look a little bit different on your end because you're the student. What we're going to do is we're going to take this page, we're going to create an index.html with this text from the box. And then we're going to make another page called privacy.html with this text. And we're going to mark it up to look pretty. And here are the markup instructions right here. And we're going to include some images. Someone help get started on that right now. In the end, you'll have some pages that look like these snapshots down here. Okay, so step one, you got to copy the content and then mark it up. HTML is a markup language, so it helps with the structure. So I'm going to, inside, underneath index.html, I'm going to highlight security and privacy and down to the end of this box. And I'm going to paste it into that template we just started. Control-C to copy, my editor, and then inside the body here, paste it underneath tags. All right, so one thing that's important is with HTML, unlike a word processor, here it seems like I have paragraphs set up nice and neat, but in HTML, white space is ignored. It's the tags that give us structure. So if I save this, and then I go and view it in my browser, say File Manager, and double-click it, notice it's all jumbled together. I lost all of that paragraph content. So again, take a look at this. Security and privacy in our digital age, blah, 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 computer security, blah, blah, blah. All of the white space that makes it look human readable here is lost when I go to HTML. So things I have to do here is say, for example, security and privacy should be a heading. And if I start my heading tag, if you don't get all these less than, greater than symbols in the right order, everything goes to hell. So usual practice for me is I type my less than and greater than, my angle brackets right away, and then I say which tag it's going to be. Like maybe I'll make this a heading too. Computer, or most editors, will try and close tags right away for you. So sometimes that's good, and sometimes it's not. So for example, I'll put an extra symbol in there for me. So again, if here I start a new paragraph tag, it's going to want to finish the paragraph tag for me. I'm not quite ready for that. So all the good things my editor is trying to do sometimes get in the way. So here I'm starting a paragraph, and then I have to end the paragraph with a /p inside the angle brackets. Computer security should be another heading. So maybe I'll make that an H3. And I have to close it /H3. And computers, again, this particular editor is looking for me to open and close things. You want those suckers to be lowercase. So we have to go in and add those wherever they belong. Otherwise, the HTML will not be displayed correctly, and we won't get what we hope to get. A few more tags here. Look at the next page. Oops. Now at the end here, I want, myself, I want this next part to link to my next page. So this is a paragraph. One line constitutes a paragraph, but I want the text of information privacy to be a link. Now a link is an anchor tag, and so I have to put a /A to start it, or an A to start it, and a /A to end it. So that's the link text in between the A tags. The actual link goes inside of the first anchor tag with an element called href. And the computer's letting you know that href should have an equals and a pair of quotes. Inside the quotes is the address of the thing I'm connecting to. So eventually I'm going to have a page called privacy.html. So we need to know file names in order to make HTML pages work right. All right, so this page is almost done. We need to get rid of those extra tags that came. And now if I save it, it should look a little prettier. So let's save and reload. All right, so one thing you'll notice is that I have an editor that I mark up the text with. And then I have a web browser to see how that looks. Now this looks like it's a hyperlink, but right now the page doesn't exist. So if I click it, it's going to say, hey, we can't find that page. So we'll need to make that page. In order to make that page, I'll need my HTML template, which is all of this starting stuff here, and then my content in the middle. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to save this, and I'm going to copy all the content from top to bottom. And I'm going to make a new page. I'm going to delete everything inside the body. So from the body tag to the closing body tag, I'm going to delete and start again. So back here, I'm going to copy the content for the privacy page and start my next page. So I have something to link to. Oops, a little too much there. A little slower. So I highlight my privacy content. I go back to my editor, and I paste it into the body. And again, like you saw before, if I just try to view this page, it'll just be one big jumble of text. I have to put the markup tags. So for example, maybe I want this to be a heading style 2. It's big, but not too big. And I have to close the heading 2, otherwise everything will be big and huge. And this is a paragraph. I have to tell the browser where the paragraph ends. And I have to then start every paragraph with a starting p tag and close it with an ending p tag. And even this last single line down here, here's a paragraph. So it needs to be marked up as such. Now, here I have a link to a web page for more information. Right now, if I save this and then display it, I'm going to save it into that same new website folder. And according to the way I set it up earlier, it needs to be saved as privacy.html. It's got to be in the same place as my index, otherwise my links won't work right. This is very important. File structure and text structure are super important to make things work. So if I go back here, let's use that a little bit, and I click my link with information privacy, I should now get another page because that exists. Now notice this HTTPS, this URL here, nothing happens when I click it because I didn't make it a hyperlink yet. In the index page, when I wanted to link to a page that lives nearby, all I need is the file name. If you want to link to a page that lives somewhere else on the internet, it has to start off with HTTP or HTTPS. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to add the anchor tags on either side. So that's going to be the text for my link. The link goes inside the anchor tag with an href, a hyperreference. Href equals quotes, double quote, and inside the double quote is where you put the address you're linking to. So I want to link to the address that I've copied. So here, my address and my link text are identical. Save that and check it out. Reload the page after I've saved it. Now notice this is hyperlinked. And if I click it, I should end up at that page. Let's go back. Now, the text and the hyperlink are the same thing here. The link text and the URL do not have to be the same. It's important that a hyperreference be set up properly, either as a relative link, a link to a page in the same spot, like privacy.html, or that it's a fully qualified domain name with the protocol HTTP or HTTPS. Notice the : / / All of that is so important. If you remove a slash or remove the colon, or you drop the S, or you put the S where it shouldn't be, everything goes to hell. The text that I'm using here, that can be anything you want it to be. So for example, here, too much stuff. Delete all of that text there and just type the phrase for privacy. And then that will become the text that links to this address inside the href attribute. So let's save that, reload the page. So what I should see is that the displayed text here will change, but the action when I click on it remains the same. So we've talked about this before in class, the idea of linked text versus the URL you're linking to. And this is the HTML structure that gives that to you. So it's an anchor tag. So start our anchor, our angle bracket, A space href equals quotes. The URL, close the quote, close the angle bracket, the link text, and then you're closing A. Ooh, somehow I lost that. Not good. So let's fix that. There should be at the end here, /A, I accidentally deleted it. I need to close my paragraph. Otherwise, if I put stuff after that, it'll get all messed up. Save. It worked okay for us a moment ago because that was the end of my page. All right, next, let's take a look at images. Back to the description of this assignment. Again, you should read through all of these carefully to make sure you follow it directly. I'm kind of sort of following it, but not really. I want to take this image and I want to add it to my page. To do that, I first have to download the image and put it in the same folder as that other stuff. So I put my stuff in Documents, CS, CS120, the website. And it's called securelock.png. Some systems, like most Windows systems, hide the .png from you. In order for HTML to work properly, you can't hide that. You've got to see it. So if you're not sure how to unhide file extensions, then let me know. Once that's saved in the same folder, I can then use it. So we're going to set up an image attribute, an image tag with an attribute next. We're going to make it float white also. We're also going to add a title attribute for a citation for where I got it. So let's go and get the basics started. So in my index page, let's see, where did I say to put that? First paragraph. Okay. So first paragraph of my index page is right up here. And so let's put it in the beginning. I'm going to give myself a new line. Now, as far as HTML goes, you can put as many new lines as you want, and save it, and then you display that file. It won't look any different. So I'm going to go back to my index page, and I can reload it, but all those extra lines I put in there you don't see. Web browsers ignore white space in HTML. So all those line returns are irrelevant. All that matters are the p tags and similar tags. So here we want to put an image, that's img, And the computer's saying, hey, do you want the rest of the image tag? Sure. Image tag has to have a source. Source is the name or location of the file. Remember, we downloaded a file, so let's double check the name of it. It is secure capital lock.png. And I need to get the name exactly right or this will not work. So in the wrong spot. It's inside the source attribute. The source equals quote. My source is secure lock.png. Alt tag is for like screen readers. So I have a friend of mine that doesn't see very well, and so when his screen reader reads him this page, when it comes to the image, it can't read him an image. It looks at the alt tag and gives him that instead. So in the alt tag, I could write something like image of lock indicating secure page. Whatever description makes sense for your particular image. So now, if I save and then reload this page, if I have that typed up right, it should display my image. Okay. Now, notice that made that line that Digital Age is in a very tall line. So the default for images is inline, which means it's just like a giant letter I or a letter A. Okay. You can also have images wrapped, which is what we'll take a look at next. So for example, we're told to make this image float right. If you're not sure how to float it right, I have a link here to the W3 Schools page that shows examples of how to make things float. So they have some style examples. Notice in the style, they dictate both the width and the height. If you don't calculate that correctly, you can screw up an image. So that you have to be careful with. And then further down, they talk about screen readers and the alt tag. And eventually we will get here to style. So here we have floating. So to float something, again, it goes inside of a style attribute inside the image tag. And they just say float right or float left, for example. And you can go try theirs out. So here they have the first smiley face floating right. If I replace the right with the left and then run it, it'll switch it to the other side of the page. So these you try it are super important to let you experiment with the HTML. And then you can just copy and paste that in to your HTML and see how it works. So for example, I'm just going to grab what they have and put it inside my image tag, which means it has to go within the angle brackets. So I paste it in. Now notice here, the way style attributes work is there's a couple things that are important. You have your quotes, and then it's the name of the style, colon, and then what you want that thing to do. So here we want to float, colon, right. Semicolon means we have more style coming. Here we want to set the width, colon, 242 pixels, and the height, semicolon, again, means new attribute, and we want to set the height to 42 pixels. I have an extra angle tag there. Problem with this is trying to make an image that wasn't square into a square. So I'm going to save that and watch what happens. So if I go back to my page, notice this image is a rectangle that's not a square. When I impose that new style, it's going to squash it vertically. Okay. Notice my lock got squashed vertically, so it's now a perfect square, okay, where it wasn't before. So I've distorted the image. I mentioned earlier that when you play around with height and width, you want to be careful. So if you're not sure how to calculate the height, the best thing is to just pick your width or vice versa. Maybe you know what you want the height to be, leave the width alone. So here, if I set the width to 42, the web browser will calculate an appropriate height so the image is not distorted. So if I save it and we show it, then I get a properly resized version of that. So I'm not distorting it. So I have it floating right there. Next thing I need to do is add an attribute to that to make sure people know I got it from a legal place. So that if the project says, in order to do that, we want to add a title attribute to the image tag with this text here saying where it came from. Now, public domain images don't need to be cited. However, for this class, you need to cite everything. So we're going to do that. I'm going to copy that citation. I'm going to go back to my editor, and I'm going to add to my image tag the title attribute, title equals quote, quote. Always a good idea to type both quotes at once and then arrow in between, and then paste or type whatever you want to type. Otherwise, you might forget to close the quote, and then your whole page goes to hell. So if you forget to close a quote that you started in the right spot, if you forget to close an angle bracket like this, less than, /p, greater than, if you don't put that greater than in the right spot, everything goes to hell. So you got to be careful about that. I'm going to save this and look at the result. So web design is a lot of playing around with the code and then seeing what it looks like. Now, if I reload this, you won't see anything. However, notice what happens when I point to the lock. Up pops that text I copied. And so that's what the title attribute does, which is kind of nice. Other things I can do, playing around with style. Let's take a look at HTML styles. We can play around with color. Notice this said I am red, I am blue. I can go to the try it yourself page, and then I can see how they did that. So in the paragraph tag, they added a style attribute. The style attribute is equal to quote, color, colon, red, semicolon, close quote. So I'm going to highlight and steal their style. Not really stealing it. Everybody does this. That's a good excuse, huh? All right. And so, for example, maybe I want this second, third paragraph here to be red. So here I can go in and paste that style attribute. Notice the style attribute has to go inside of the angle brackets. So it's p space style equals quote, whatever my style is. And styles have two elements. They have the name and the value of what we're doing. The name and the value are separated by a colon, and then it's always ended with a semicolon. So if I save this, I should have a red third paragraph. Save, and then reload, and there's my red third paragraph. You can control background colors, background images, you can move stuff around the page. You've seen lots of wonderful websites. All that wonderfulness comes from setting up the HTML structure properly and then using styles to make it look pretty. And so that's what we're going to spend the next 3 weeks on, getting used to HTML, which is this purple stuff, and the styles, which are this blue and green stuff that's floating around in between. And it takes a little while to get used to. So right now, it might look a little weird, but we will get used to it. For example, on the body here, I could add a style to the body. So body space style. Inside style, I have equals quote, quote. Within the quotes, I can type styles. Like, for example, I can do background. And there's so many types of styles you can do. I can never remember all of them. Background color, colon, and then I can pick a color. Like, let's see if light blue is a color. And then semicolon. Some colors are named, some colors aren't. There's like 17 million colors to work with. They don't all have names. We talked about that before. Reload. Oh yeah, look at that. Light blue is a color. Nice. If you want to get other colors, I had some links earlier to color pages. So let's go back to modules. Scroll down. Okay, HTML. What's wrong week? And let's go to tutorials here again. Somewhere here, colors. So colors can be named, but they could have hexadecimal values. So where's hexadecimal here? There we go. So we talked about hexadecimal before, and there's all different kinds of hexadecimal colors. Ooh, that's an interesting ad. Huh. All right. Try it yourself. So they list some colors here. We could pick a different one, like maybe this green right here. If we want to grab it, notice if it's a hex color, it has to start with the pound symbol. So I could copy that and then insert it into my page. So instead of light blue, I could insert that color, save it, reload it. Geek, that's quite the color, huh? More with colors comes from our other color pages before. So let's see. Search color picker. W3 Schools color picker is not bad. Image color picker, Atom color picker. I think I've checked that one out before. Actually, no, I don't remember that one. Let's go to W3 Schools color picker. Okay, so they have a bunch of versions of their color picker here. Hue, saturation, lightness, red, green, blue, hex. Okay, so we could mix our own color here. I say let's drop the red, let's up the green, let's throw a little blue in there. That's a lovely color right there. And then down below it gives me the RGB in decimal, and then underneath that it gives me the RGB in hexadecimal. So I can copy that. There's lots of different color designers out there on the web. So let's see, I was playing with the background color. And replace that. Save it. Reload it. And we could play all day with colors and styles. It's a little mild, but I like that. Let's go with it. All right. So this is just an introduction to what is HTML, a little bit about style and images, floating. We'll have more fun later. Have a good day. That's it for now.